Nightmares don't always end when you wake up. Sometimes they linger in the shadows of your home, in the static of your TV, or in the silence after a whisper. These stories will drag you into the kind of dreams you never escape, because they're waiting in reality. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more scary stories. This happened to me a year ago, and I still haven't made sense of it. I don't expect anyone to believe me, but I swear on my life this is true. It was a Saturday night. I had gone to bed late, scrolling on my phone until I couldn't keep my eyes open. The house was quiet. Too quiet, actually. Normally I'd hear the hum of cars passing by on the main road, but that night the silence felt heavier than usual. At 3:17 a.m., I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand. Half asleep, I grabbed it without even checking the number. My first thought was that maybe it was work, or maybe a family emergency. But when I put it to my ear, what I heard made my blood run cold. It was me, my voice, whispering, and it said, "They're already in the house." I froze. For a second, I thought I was dreaming, but the cold sweat on my back told me otherwise. My hand shook as I pulled the phone away and looked at the caller ID. The screen showed my own number. I dropped the phone onto the bed and just stared at it, waiting for it to ring again. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I told myself it had to be some kind of glitch, some scam or spoofed call, but the voice, the way it whispered, it was too real, too me. I was wide awake now, and that's when I realized something else. The house wasn't silent anymore. I heard a floorboard creak from downstairs. At first, I told myself it was nothing. The house was old. It made noises all the time. But then there was another creak, this time longer, heavier, like a footstep. I sat up in bed listening. My phone was still in my hand. But now, the screen was black. I didn't even think to call anyone. I was too focused on the sound of slow, deliberate movement below me. There it was again, the faint groan of weight pressing on wood. And then, another, moving toward the stairs. The hairs on my arm stood on end. My throat went dry. I quietly got out of bed and grabbed the baseball bat I kept in the corner. My legs felt like lead as I moved to my bedroom door, straining my ears for the next sound. For a moment, there was silence again. A long, suffocating silence. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. Then, creak. The first step on the staircase. My whole body locked up. I was on the second floor. Whoever or whatever was in my house was coming up. I didn't know what to do. Should I hide, run, confront them? My mind was racing, but my body was frozen. The steps grew louder. Second stair, third stair, fourth. Whoever it was moved slowly, as if they wanted me to hear them, as if they were enjoying it. I tightened my grip on the bat and tried to breathe as quietly as possible. By the seventh step, I couldn't take it anymore. I yanked my bedroom door open and raised the bat, ready to swing. The staircase was empty. No one was there, but the steps stopped, right in the middle of the stairs. I don't know how long I stood there, staring into the dark. It felt like hours. Finally, I forced myself to shut the door and lock it. I backed away and tried to convince myself I was safe, that I was just tired, that the call had gotten in my head. I sat on the bed, bat in hand, waiting for something else to happen. And eventually, exhaustion won. I must have dozed off sitting upright because the next thing I remember was my phone buzzing again. I jolted awake. The room was still dark. My phone lit up with an incoming call. The number again. My number. With shaking hands, I answered. The same whisper. My voice. This time it said, "Don't open the door." Before I could even process it, there was a knock on my bedroom door. I dropped the phone and stumbled back, clutching the bat so hard my hands ached. The knock came again, gentle, almost polite. Then, the handle turned. I shouted that I had a weapon, that I'd call the cops, but my voice cracked. Whoever was outside just kept turning the handle slowly, rhythmically, like they had all the time in the world. Finally, it stopped. I waited, every nerve in my body screaming, until I couldn't take it anymore. I rushed forward and yanked the door open, swinging the bat as hard as I could. The hallway was empty, but at the end of it, leaning against the wall, was a mirror. I didn't own a mirror like that. It was tall, old, with a wooden frame. And in its reflection, I saw myself, standing at the doorway, bat raised, eyes wide. Except, my reflection smiled, and whispered something I couldn't hear through the glass. I slammed the door shut and backed away, heart racing. I didn't sleep again that night. By morning, the mirror was gone. No sign of it anywhere in the house. I don't know who or what called me that night. I don't know who was on the stairs or why the mirror was there. All I know is this. Every night since, I wake up at exactly 3:17 a.m. and I don't dare answer the phone. I used to laugh at scary stories, ghosts, demons, monsters, just entertainment for me, nothing more. But after what happened in my house, I can't laugh anymore. I live alone in an old 2-story house with a basement. When I bought it, I thought the creaky floors and drafty hallways just came with the territory. Old houses make noise, that's what everyone says. But the noise I started hearing wasn't normal. It began with faint thuds. At first, I thought it was the pipes, or maybe the foundation, shifting. But these weren't random clanks. They were steady, rhythmic, like footsteps, and they always came from the basement. The first time I heard them, I was in bed. Around 2 a.m, I woke up to what sounded like someone moving downstairs. My heart sank. I thought someone had broken in. I grabbed a flashlight and a kitchen knife and crept down the hall. The house was silent, except for the faint creak of the basement stairs. I froze at the basement door. The sound was clear now. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, one step at a time, climbing the wooden staircase. I held my breath, waiting for the knob to turn. But it didn't. The steps stopped halfway up. With every ounce of courage I had, I unlocked the door and yanked it open, shining my flashlight down the stairs. The beam lit nothing but empty steps, leading into pitch-black darkness. There was no one there. That night I told myself it was my imagination. Old houses, creaky stairs, logical explanation. But then it happened again, and again, every single night. The footsteps always came around 2 a.m., always slow, always climbing, but no one was ever there. The scariest part wasn't the noise itself, it was the door. I always locked it, always double-checked. But every morning it would be open, just an inch, wider than the night before. The first morning, I thought I had forgotten to lock it. The second morning, I blamed a faulty lock. But by the 5th morning, when the door stood cracked wide enough that I could see the basement shadows from the hallway, I knew something was wrong. Something was opening it. I bought a new lock, a heavy-duty deadbolt this time. Installed it myself, tested it over and over. The door was solid. That night, I heard the footsteps again, louder this time. Each creak echoed through the house like a countdown. I clutched a bat in bed, staring at the door down the hallway. I thought I could see the knob twitching in the dark, then silence. I must have drifted off because the next thing I remember was sunlight streaming in. I got up, dreading what I already knew. The deadbolt was undone. The door was open. 2 whole inches. At this point, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think. My life became about that door. Every night I sat in the hallway, bat in hand, watching. One night, I even shouted down the stairs. My voice cracked as I yelled, demanding whoever or whatever was down there to show itself. No response, just silence, until the footsteps began again. Slower this time, almost mocking. The steps stopped just beneath the door. I swear I could hear breathing on the other side. I pressed my ear against the wood, and I heard a whisper. My own name. I called the cops the next day, told them someone was breaking into my basement. They came, searched every corner, found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no footprints, nothing. The officer looked at me like I was crazy. "Old houses settle," he said. "But old houses don't whisper your name." I bought a camera, set it up facing the basement door, recording all night. I barely slept, waiting for morning so I could check the footage. What I saw made my stomach drop. At 2:04 a.m., the basement doorknob began to turn on its own. Slowly, inch by inch, the door creaked open. But it didn't just open. A hand, long, pale, too many joints in the fingers, slid out and curled around the edge of the door. It pushed, just enough for the door to crack wider. Then it pulled back. The door stayed open the rest of the night. I moved out of the house a week later. I didn't sell it, didn't tell anyone. I just left, packed a bag, and drove until I couldn't anymore. But sometimes, when I wake up at night, I swear I can still hear it. The slow creak of footsteps climbing the stairs. And when I check my door in the morning, sometimes it's not quite closed, just open, an inch wider. I've owned my house for 4 years. It's not huge, just a 2-story with a small yard and a detached garage, but it was mine, and I thought it was safe. That was before I found out I wasn't living here alone. It started with little things. At first I thought I was just forgetful. I'd leave the remote on the coffee table, then later find it on the arm of the couch. I'd wake up in the morning and find cabinet doors open in the kitchen. One night, I swore I'd locked the front door before bed, only to find it unlocked when I got up for water. It was unnerving, but I brushed it off. Maybe I was distracted. Maybe I was tired. But then food started going missing. I'd buy groceries, bread, fruit, milk, and a day later half of it would be gone. A full pack of lunch meat disappeared overnight. At first I thought I'd just eaten more than I remembered. But then I found an empty granola bar wrapper stuffed behind my TV stand. I don't even eat granola bars. The more I noticed, the more paranoid I became. I started double-checking locks, writing down what I had in my fridge, even marking the position of certain things just to see if they moved. And they always moved. One night, I was lying in bed when I heard it for the first time. Faint creaking from above me. My ceiling. The attic. I froze, holding my breath, listening. The sound was rhythmic, like someone shifting their weight, pacing back and forth across the floorboards. My heart dropped. Someone was living in my house. The next morning, I convinced myself it had to be animals. Maybe raccoons, maybe squirrels, something small that snuck in. That thought was easier to accept than the alternative. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. So, after work, I pulled down the attic ladder and climbed up with a flashlight. The smell hit me first. Musty, stale sweat. I scanned the beam across the attic. At first, nothing. Just boxes and insulation. But then the light fell on the corner, and my stomach dropped. There was a makeshift bed. Old blankets, pillows, clothes, all piled together on top of a flattened cardboard box. Food wrappers scattered around it, an empty water bottle. And worse, the blankets were sunken down, shaped, like someone had been lying there. Recently, still lying there. The indentation looked fresh, the pillow still bent where a head had pressed into it. I backed down the ladder so fast I nearly fell, slammed it shut, locked it. I sat in the living room, heart racing, staring at the ceiling. Whoever had been in there could still be inside my house. I called the police. When they came, 2 officers searched the attic. They found the same bed I did. The wrappers, the blankets, but no one. The cop told me it was probably a squatter, someone slipping in when I wasn't home, hiding out in the attic. He said it wasn't uncommon. But what stuck with me was what he said as they left. If you see more signs, call us again. Sometimes they come back. That night, I barely slept. I sat in my bed clutching a baseball bat, staring at the ceiling. Around 3 a.m., I heard it again. Creak-eek, creak-eek. Footsteps, slow, directly above me. I dialed 911 with shaking hands, whispering that the squatter was back. They promised to send someone, but the minutes dragged on like hours. The footsteps kept moving, not pacing this time, walking, steady, right across the length of my ceiling. Then silence. And then 3 soft thuds, like knuckles rapping from above, right over my bed. The police searched again. Nothing. But when I checked the attic after they left, something had changed. The bed was disturbed. The blankets pulled back as though someone had just gotten up. And lying on the pillow was something new. A single granola bar. After that night, I refused to stay in the house. I crashed on a friend's couch for a week, but every time I thought about going back, I felt sick. My friend joked about it, said I was letting my imagination get the better of me. But then one morning, I drove past my house on the way to work. I don't know why. Maybe to prove to myself it was fine. When I looked up at the attic window, I saw something that froze me in place. The curtain was pulled back, and a face was staring down at me. I sold the house not long after. Took a huge loss, but I didn't care. The realtor never asked about the attic, and I didn't tell her. But sometimes late at night, I wonder about the new family that moved in. If they've heard the footsteps yet. If they've opened the attic. If they've found the bed and the impression of someone still lying there. It was almost midnight when Greg decided to take the back road home. He'd stayed too late at a friend's cookout, and now the main highway was jammed with construction. The back road wasn't much faster, but it was quiet. Empty stretches of farmland and woods. No street lights, barely any houses. Just darkness, broken only by his headlights cutting through the night. At first, it was peaceful. The kind of drive where the world feels like it's sleeping. But then he saw the figure. Up ahead on the shoulder of the road stood a hitchhiker. A tall man in a dirty coat, his arm raised with his thumb out. Greg slowed instinctively until he saw the man's face. He wasn't just smiling. He was grinning. Wide. Stretched too far. And his eyes completely black. No whites, No iris, just endless darkness staring straight into the beams of Greg's headlights. Greg's stomach twisted. He pressed on the gas, swerving a little to give the stranger space, and didn't look back. A few minutes later, his grip loosened on the wheel. He told himself it was nothing. Just a guy with messed up eyes. Contacts, maybe. Someone trying to freak drivers out for laughs. He shook it off to calm his breathing. Until he saw him again. Another curve in the road. Another stretch of dark shoulder. And there he was. The same hitchhiker. Same coat, same stance, same horrible grin. Only this time, he was closer to the road. Almost leaning into the lane, like he'd been waiting for Greg. Greg's heart slammed. He hit the gas harder, pushing the car faster than was safe, refusing to look in the rearview mirror. 10 minutes passed. Nothing. Just empty road. Again. But then up ahead he saw the shape. The man. Again. This time he was standing directly at the edge of the pavement. His grin stretched wider, impossibly wide, teeth gleaming in Greg's headlights. His black eyes didn't blink. Greg nearly screamed. He swerved so hard he almost hit the ditch, tires squealing before he corrected the wheel. His pulse was pounding in his ears, sweat running down his back. This wasn't possible. It wasn't. The hitchhiker wasn't just showing up again. He was getting closer. Greg sped down the road, but the night stretched endlessly. He kept checking the clock on the dash, watching minutes crawl by, each one heavier than the last. Every few miles, he'd see him again. Closer, always closer. One time, the hitchhiker stood in the center of the road, forcing Greg to swerve around him. Another time, he was crouched on the shoulder like an animal, head tilted too far, grinning up into the headlights. Each time, Greg's gut told him the same thing. The man wasn't hitchhiking anymore. He was hunting. Finally, Greg spotted the glow of a gas station ahead. Relief surged through him. Civilization. Light. Safety. He pulled into the lot fast, tires crunching on gravel, and jumped out of the car. The attendant behind the counter looked up, startled, as Greg rushed inside. "You okay, man?" the attendant asked. Greg shook his head, trying to explain, words tripping over themselves. "There's a guy, on the road. He keeps showing up, like, over and over. Black eyes, smiling. He's following me." The attendant's face drained of color. Slowly, he set down the magazine he'd been holding. "You saw him too." Greg froze. "What do you mean?" The attendant swallowed, glancing toward the dark glass doors. "They say he walks this road at night. Always smiling, always waiting. My uncle saw him when he was young. Car broke down right after. He said the man knocked on his window, and when he looked again, he was gone." Greg felt sick. "So what do I do? How do I get rid of him?" The attendant just shook his head. "You don't stop. You don't talk to him. You don't let him catch up." Greg's heart sank. He turned, staring out the glass doors at his car. The road stretched beyond it, disappearing into the night. And in the distance, just past the glow of the station lights, he saw the hitchhiker, standing, waiting, smiling. Greg refused to leave at first. He sat in the station for nearly an hour, pacing, trying to convince himself it wasn't real. But eventually, he knew he couldn't stay there forever. He had to get home. So, he got back in his car. The attendant didn't say goodbye. He just watched him leave with pity in his eyes. Greg drove fast, faster than he ever had. The road blurred beneath him. He gripped the wheel so tightly, his knuckles ached. But no matter how fast he drove, the hitchhiker was always ahead, sometimes far off in the dark, sometimes right at the edge of his headlights, always closer. By the last stretch of road, Greg was sobbing. He was exhausted, terrified, begging under his breath for it to end. His house was only a few miles away. He just had to make it. That's when he heard it. The back door of his car, click, slowly opening. Greg screamed, swerving violently, nearly flipping the car. He slammed on the brakes, spinning to a stop in the middle of the empty road. Chest heaving, he looked around in panic. The back door was open, the seat was empty, and in the rearview mirror, a grin, pitch black eyes, smiling back at him. It was nearly 3 a.m. when Daniel shot awake. No dream, no noise, just the instinctual jolt of a father's fear. The house was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional groan of the old pipes. He rubbed his face, swung his legs over the bed, and glanced toward the window. That's when he froze. Outside, in the faint blue wash of the security light, stood his wife and 2 children. They were barefoot, still in their pajamas, huddled together near the back porch. His wife's face was pale, her hand pressed protectively against their daughter's shoulder. His son clutched her other hand tightly, his small face twisted in panic, and they were all looking straight at him. "Daniel!" His wife's muffled voice called through the glass. "Please, let us in!" His heart lurched. He was out of bed in seconds, rushing to the door. But then something stopped him. A noise. From behind. He turned. The hallway was dark. The house still. The children's bedroom doors cracked open just slightly. Daniel's chest tightened. No. He crept down the hall, trying not to make a sound. He peeked into his daughter's room first. There she was, fast asleep. Blanket pulled up to her chin, lips parted softly in the even rhythm of dreams. His son's room was the same. Curled in bed, toy truck still clutched in his hand, breathing slow and steady. Daniel felt his knees weaken. They were in bed. They were inside. So who or what was outside? His stomach twisted as he walked back toward the kitchen window. He forced himself to look. They were still there. His wife, his son, his daughter. Exactly the same. Standing in the night, staring in. His wife's lips moved again. "Please, let us in, Daniel. We're so cold." Her voice was softer now, almost pleading. The kind of tone that made him want to throw the door open instantly. But then his daughter outside tilted her head. Too far, too sharp. Her neck cracked audibly in the silence, and her smile spread, too wide. Daniel's skin crawled. He backed away from the window, chest heaving, sweat cold on his forehead. This wasn't real. Couldn't be real. He shut the curtains quickly, forcing himself not to look again. He locked the door, checked the deadbolt twice, then staggered back into the living room, every instinct screaming at him to keep calm, for the kids' sake. And that's when the knocking began. Soft at first, then louder. A steady, rhythmic pounding on the back door. "Daniel!" His wife's voice again. But now it was wrong. Too smooth, too deliberate. "We're your family. Let us in. They aren't safe in here." "Not with you." His breath caught. Not with him? What did that mean? He clutched the fireplace poker in shaking hands and moved back down the hall. He had to check again. Had to make sure. Both kids were still there. Still sleeping. His wife was in bed too, turned on her side, her body rising and falling with each breath. They were all here. But the pounding didn't stop. Daniel stayed awake the rest of the night, sitting in the hallway between the bedrooms, poker in hand, eyes locked on the front and back doors. Every so often, the voices would change. Sometimes it was his son's voice outside, sometimes his daughter's. Each time they begged a little more desperately. Each time he refused to answer. Just before dawn, it all stopped. The pounding, the voices, the shadows on the porch, gone. When morning came, sunlight finally spilling across the floors, he dared to look out the window. Nothing but wet grass and an empty yard. No footprints. No sign anyone had been there at all. Daniel didn't tell his family. How could he? What could he possibly say? He just tried to keep things normal. Breakfast, cartoons, chores. But he couldn't shake it. He kept glancing at the windows, the doors, every reflection. That night, he didn't sleep. He couldn't. And when 3 a.m. came, the voices returned. This time, at the front door. He heard his daughter's voice first. "Daddy, it's cold outside. Please let us in." Then his son's. "Daddy, I'm scared. The dark is bad out here. Let us in." Daniel's grip on the poker tightened, knuckles white. The real children slept soundly in their rooms. He checked again. He always checked. But the voices outside didn't let up. Then came his wife's voice, lower, harsher. "They're not yours. You know that. Not anymore." Daniel staggered back, heart hammering. He didn't understand, didn't want to understand. Something scraped against the door. Slow, long, like nails dragging down the wood. He didn't open it, couldn't. The third night, it got worse. The pounding shook the walls. The voices grew louder, layered, distorted, like a chorus of his family screaming, begging, accusing all at once. "Open the door. Why won't you let us in? You're keeping us prisoner. You're not our father." Daniel sobbed, covering his ears, rocking in the dark hallway as his children slept soundly only feet away. And then, silence. He dared to breathe, until he heard the bedroom door creak. Not the outside door, the inside one. He rushed to his daughter's room. She was still in bed, but her door was wide open, though he swore he'd shut it. Her eyes fluttered open. She looked at him with confusion. "Daddy? Why are you crying?" He forced a smile. "Bad dream, sweetie. Go back to sleep." But when he turned to leave, he saw it. The curtain over her window was open, and outside, standing just beyond the glass, was his daughter, smiling that too wide smile, pitch black eyes staring back. The pounding began again. Not on the doors this time, on the windows. Every single one. Dozens of fists slamming against the glass in unison, rattling the frames, shaking the house. The voices screamed from every direction. His wife, his son, his daughter, all demanding to be let in, all accusing him of something he couldn't understand. He clutched the poker tighter, trembling, tears streaming down his face. When he finally dared to look at the window again, he wished he hadn't. Because they weren't outside anymore. They were inside, standing in the hallway. And his real family still slept soundly in their beds. Ethan was the kind of guy who left the TV on for background noise. It didn't matter what was playing. Reruns, infomercials, even static. He just needed something to fill the silence of his apartment. Most nights, his go-to was flipping through channels until the lull of meaningless chatter or commercials put him to sleep on the couch. But this night was different. It was a little past 2 a.m. when he landed on Channel 6. He frowned. Normally that channel was nothing but static. Tonight it was still static, but not quite the same. The snow on the screen had a rhythm to it, almost like a heartbeat. And beneath the hiss of white noise, Ethan thought he heard something else. Whispers. He turned the volume up. Definitely whispers. But they weren't clear. like dozens of voices stacked on top of each other, murmuring nonsense. He leaned forward, squinting at the screen. That's when the static flickered. For half a second, Ethan swore he saw his own living room on the screen. He froze, remote in hand. His couch, his coffee table, even the crooked poster above the TV, it was all there. And just as quickly, it was gone, swallowed back into snow and hiss. Weird, Ethan muttered, trying to laugh it off. He must have dozed off and imagined it. Just tired eyes playing tricks. Still, something about it nagged at him. He left the channel on. By 2:30, the static flickered again. This time, the image lasted longer. It was his living room. No mistaking it now. The camera angle was wide, as though mounted in the corner near the ceiling. He could see himself, sitting right there on the couch, staring dumbly at the TV. Ethan's heart pounded. He looked behind him. No camera, no wires, just his cluttered little apartment. When he looked back, the image was still there, the feed of his own living room. And then he noticed something. There was movement, behind him, on the screen, in the corner of the room, just beyond the couch. At first it was just a shadow, darker than the rest. Then it stretched, lengthened. A shape peeling itself out of the wall. Ethan's throat went dry. He whipped around again. Nothing. Just the blank wall behind his couch. When he looked back at the TV, the shadow was closer. Closer to him. It was standing now, the vague outline of a person, but too tall, too thin, with arms that seemed to drag. On the feed, Ethan sat frozen in place, oblivious. He shot to his feet, heart hammering. The static feed rippled, then cut out, back to snow and whispers. Okay, nope, I'm done, he muttered, fumbling with the remote, switching channels. Infomercials, late-night talk shows, a movie rerun. All normal. Channel 6 was the only one that was wrong. He turned off the TV. Silence filled the room. Too much silence. Because now he could hear something else. Behind him. The sound of something heavy dragging across the floor. Ethan spun, brandishing the remote like a weapon. Nothing. No one. The living room was empty. Jesus Christ. He laughed, nervously rubbing his eyes. He was overtired, that was all. Needed to sleep. He double-checked the locks, then trudged to his bedroom, collapsing onto the mattress. For a while, the quiet was comforting. Until his phone buzzed. A notification. From an unknown number. One new message. It was a photo of his living room, taken from the corner near the ceiling. And in the photo, a tall, thin shadow was standing behind his couch. Ethan sat upright, clutching the phone so tightly his hand shook. He didn't want to look, but he forced himself to check the time. 3:17 a.m. He turned the phone off, buried it under his pillow, and told himself not to panic. But the whispering started again. Not from the TV this time, from the hallway. He lay still, trying not to breathe too loudly. The whispers grew clearer, soft, deliberate, like someone trying to mimic his own voice. Ethan! It was coming closer. He grabbed the baseball bat from under his bed and stood, every muscle in his body taut. Slowly, he crept toward the bedroom door. The whispers stopped. Silence. He reached for the doorknob, and the TV in the living room flicked on by itself. Channel 6. The static wasn't static anymore. It was the live feed again. His apartment, his hallway. And on the screen, just outside his bedroom door, something tall and thin was waiting. He stumbled back, slamming the bedroom door shut, locking it, pressing his back against it. His pulse thundered in his ears. The TV hissed louder, The static filled with movement, and then the feed switched. It wasn't showing the hallway anymore. It was showing his bedroom. The camera angle looked down from the corner of the ceiling, pointed directly at him. On the screen, he saw himself, and behind him, a tall, thin figure leaned in, its face nothing but static. He spun, swinging the bat wildly. Nothing there. Nothing but shadows. When he looked back at the screen, the figure was closer, almost over his shoulder. The whispers filled the room, layered and distorted. "Let me in," Ethan screamed, smashing the TV with the bat. Sparks flew. The screen cracked. The static died. The apartment plunged into silence again. He dropped the bat, gasping, his heart slamming against his ribs. The silence stretched on. Then, softly, from right behind him, "Thank you." The lights flickered, and the last thing Ethan saw before everything went dark was his own reflection in the black TV screen, smiling back at him. I travel a lot for work. Mostly small towns, long highways, and nameless hotels that all blur together after a while. I've gotten used to the dull routine of check-in, cheap dinners, and sleeping under blankets that don't smell like home. But what happened to me in room 209 of a roadside hotel outside Nebraska is something I'll never forget. It was close to midnight when I pulled off the interstate. The neon sign out front buzzed weakly, flickering between vacancy and just blank darkness. The lobby was deserted except for the desk clerk, a pale, tired-looking woman who didn't ask for ID, didn't greet me with the usual fake smile. She just slid a keycard across the counter and mumbled, "Second floor." I was too exhausted to care. Room 209 was just like any other mid-range chain hotel room. Beige walls, stiff mattress, a faint smell of bleach that didn't quite mask something sour underneath. I dropped my bag on the chair, kicked off my shoes, and went into the bathroom to splash cold water on my face. That's when I noticed it. The mirror. At first, I thought I was just seeing things because of the fluorescent light flickering overhead. But when I leaned closer, I realized my reflection wasn't syncing with me. When I lifted my hand to my face, it lagged a second behind. When I turned my head, the reflection turned slower, almost reluctantly, like it wasn't just copying me. It was watching me. I froze completely, holding my breath. And then my reflection moved. Not a twitch, not a flicker. It took a deliberate step closer to the glass, even though I hadn't moved at all. I stumbled backward, heart hammering, nearly tripping over the edge of the tub. My reflection remained at the glass, head tilted slightly, lips curling into the faintest smile. The bathroom light flickered again, buzzing, and just like that, it was normal. Perfectly in sync. I convinced myself it was fatigue, a trick of tired eyes. I hadn't slept much the past few days. Long drives, bad coffee, endless miles. My brain had to be playing tricks on me. But when I got into bed, I couldn't stop glancing at the bathroom door. The mirror was in there, and I felt like something was behind it, pressing its face against the glass, waiting. I left the bathroom light on that night. I woke up around 3:12 a.m. to the sound of water running. I staggered out of bed, groggy and confused. The bathroom door was cracked open, a soft glow spilling into the dark room. The sink faucet was running at full blast, but when I pushed the door open, the handle cold and damp in my hand, the room was empty, except for the mirror. The reflection was wrong again. My doppelganger in the glass wasn't standing where I was. It was leaned forward, palms flat against the other side of the mirror, staring at me with an expression that was pure hunger. And then it mouthed something. I couldn't hear it, but I could read the shape of the words. Let me out. The lights flickered, and I slammed the door shut, heart racing so hard I thought I might black out. The next morning, I went downstairs to check out, but the front desk was empty. No clerk. No bell to ring. The lobby felt abandoned, like no one had been there for years. I left the key card on the counter and walked out into the blinding sunlight. For a moment, I convinced myself I had dreamed it all, until I got home 2 days later. I was unpacking my suitcase when I froze. At the bottom of the bag was a folded piece of hotel stationery. I hadn't packed it. I hadn't even touched the desk in room 209. The paper was warped with water stains. In shaky, frantic handwriting, it read, "Do not look in the mirror after midnight. It learns too quickly." That night, I went into my own bathroom to brush my teeth. My apartment is small, the kind of place where you can see every corner in a single glance. And yet, when I looked into my mirror, I swear, I saw something shift just a second too late. I spat out the toothpaste, shut off the light, and tried not to look again. But I can feel it, even now. When I sit in the dark of my living room, the TV off, the windows reflecting my face back at me, I can see it. That little lag, that hesitation. Like my reflection isn't just me anymore. It's something else. And every time I blink, it seems a little closer to getting out. Ethan wasn't a restless sleeper. He'd always been the type to collapse into bed and stay put until morning. So when he woke at 3:14 a.m. to the faint sound of dripping water and the cold sting of air in his bedroom, he knew something was off. Groggy, he sat up. The first thing he noticed was the smell. Wet earth. The pungent scent of soil after rain, sharp and out of place inside his second-floor apartment. Then his eyes adjusted. Across the wooden floor, leading from the side of his bed, all the way down the hallway, were muddy footprints. Bare. Human. Ethan's pulse spiked as he flung off the covers and scrambled to his feet. The prints started just inches from where he had been sleeping, continuing toward the living room and ending at the front door. But there were none leading in. He froze, staring at them in disbelief. His door had been locked. He knew it had. He always double-checked. And yet, something had been standing by his bed. Ethan forced himself to follow the trail. Each print was smeared, damp, clinging to the floorboards. They were long, with toes splayed wide, like whoever or whatever had left them had stood barefoot in thick mud. His throat tightened. He reached the front door. The chain was still latched, the deadbolt still locked. He felt sick. The prints ended right at the door frame, as if the intruder had walked out. But how? Heart-hammering, Ethan spent the next hour checking every corner of his apartment. The closets, the bathroom, under the bed. He found nothing. Just silence, heavy and suffocating. Eventually, exhaustion won. He told himself it had to be some kind of prank. Maybe he had tracked the mud himself somehow, though he couldn't explain why it started at his bed. Still, it was easier to believe that than the alternative. He wiped up the prints, locked the bedroom door, and finally drifted back into an uneasy sleep. The next night, Ethan woke again. This time, it wasn't the smell that got him. It was the sound. A wet squelch. His eyes snapped open, heart pounding, and he knew before even looking. There they were, fresh, muddy prints leading from his bed. He bolted upright, chest tight, staring in horror as the trail crept toward the door again. His eyes darted to his feet. They were clean. His sheets were dry. And the prints were still wet, glistening in the faint light from the window. This time, he didn't move. He sat frozen, muscles locked, listening. Something was in his apartment. A faint shuffle echoed down the hallway, then stopped. The silence pressed against his eardrums until they rang. Gathering courage, Ethan grabbed the baseball bat from beneath his bed and inched down the hallway. His breath was shallow, every step a scream in his skull. The prints led him again to the front door where they stopped. No sound, no figure, nothing but that awful smell of earth. He reached for the doorknob, hands trembling. The metal was cold. He yanked the door open. Nothing. The hall outside was empty. When he turned back, though, the prints were gone, as if they'd never been there. He didn't sleep that night. The following day, Ethan confided in his neighbor, a woman named Marla, who had lived in the building for decades. At first, she laughed off his story, but when he mentioned the smell of earth, her face went pale. "You need to leave a bowl of salt water by your bed," she whispered. "And don't, under any circumstances, open your door if you hear it." Ethan frowned. "Hear what?" Marla's lips pressed into a thin line. She wouldn't explain further, only repeating the warning. By nightfall, Ethan had almost convinced himself she was just an eccentric old woman trying to spook him. But the moment he saw the prints again, materializing fresh by his bed, her words came rushing back. He placed the bowl of salt water on the nightstand, staring at it like it was his only lifeline. The footprints dragged slowly toward the door, but halfway down the hallway they stopped. Silence. And then, a knock. 3 soft raps against his locked front door. Ethan's blood ran cold. He remembered Marla's warning. "Don't open it." The knock came again, louder this time, followed by a wet dragging noise, like something heavy sliding across the wood floor. He clutched the bat, staring at the door. Then from the other side, a voice. His own voice. "Ethan! Open the door!" His breath hitched. It sounded exactly like him. Same tone, same inflection, but muffled, warped, as though spoken from deep underground. "Ethan! Let me in!" The saltwater bowl trembled on the nightstand. The air grew damp, oppressive. His reflection in the black screen of the TV seemed to ripple, not quite sinking with him. The thing knocked once more, then fell silent. When morning came, the footprints were gone. Ethan lasted 3 more nights. Each time the prints returned. Each time the knock followed, and each time the voice grew more convincing. By the 4th night, it wasn't just his voice, it was others. His mother, his best friend, his late father, all whispering, all begging him to open the door. But Ethan never did. On the 5th night, the footprints changed. Instead of ending at the front door, they turned back toward the bedroom. He woke to see them circling his bed, muddy impressions dark against the wood, as though something had been pacing there for hours. And when he sat up, holding his breath, he realized the bowl of salt water was gone. The whisper came again, right beside his ear this time. "Ethan." The police found his apartment abandoned 3 days later. His front door was still locked, the chain still latched from the inside. But the bedroom floor was covered in muddy footprints, so many they overlapped, layer upon layer, circling endlessly. And on the nightstand sat the saltwater bowl, empty. Melissa and David were first-time parents, The kind who triple-checked locks, sanitized every surface, and made sure the baby monitor was always charged. Their daughter, Lily, was only 7 months old, still tiny, still fragile, and the center of their world. The baby monitor was their lifeline. At night, Melissa kept it on the nightstand, glowing faintly, picking up every rustle and coo from Lily's crib down the hall. One Saturday night, around 2:30 a.m., David stirred awake. He wasn't sure what had woken him, but the soft crackle of static drew his eyes to the monitor. The grainy black and white screen showed Lily in her crib. At first, nothing seemed unusual, until David realized she wasn't asleep. She was smiling. Not the sleepy twitch of a dream, but a wide, toothless grin. Her little eyes were fixed to the side, staring at something beyond the crib's edge. David leaned closer. On the monitor, it almost looked like Lily was reacting to someone standing just outside of frame. Then came the sound. A faint giggle. Melissa sat up instantly. "Was that?" "Yes," David said, throat dry. "That was her. She's laughing at something." Their daughter rarely laughed, only ever at silly faces or tickles. But this laughter was different. So full, so delighted. It sounded like she was with someone she knew. Only there shouldn't have been anyone there. Melissa grabbed David's arm. "Go check!" "Please." David didn't waste a second. He rushed down the hall, heart hammering, and flung the nursery door open. The sight that greeted him froze him in place. Lily was sitting up in her crib, chubby hands clapping, eyes fixed on the far corner of the room. Her face was lit with joy, as if she were looking at the funniest thing in the world. But the corner was empty, just shadows and pale moonlight seeping through the curtains. Melissa appeared in the doorway behind him, gasping when she saw their daughter. Lily giggled again, reaching her arms toward the corner. Then abruptly, her laughter stopped. Her smile faded. She stared, still, silent. And then she began to cry. The couple managed to soothe her back to sleep, but neither of them slept after that. By morning, David tried to rationalize it. Babies were unpredictable, easily amused by lights, shapes, or even their own fingers. "It was nothing," he told Melissa over coffee. "Just a weird coincidence." Melissa didn't answer. She kept glancing toward the nursery, her face pale. That night, it happened again. At almost the same time, 2:33 a.m., David woke to static from the monitor. He groggily reached for it, but the sight on the screen jolted him fully awake. Lily was standing this time, gripping the crib's edge with tiny fists. She was smiling again, giggling at the corner of the room. But this time, David noticed something new. The static on the monitor screen seemed heavier in that corner. Darker, like the pixels themselves refused to show what was there. "Melissa," he whispered, shaking his wife awake. She sat up, already tense. They both leaned over the monitor, listening. Faintly, underneath Lily's giggles, came another sound. A voice. Low, soft, almost like a hum. The monitor picked it up in brief crackles, too distorted to make out words, but undeniably there. Melissa clutched his arm. "Do you hear that?" David didn't reply. He was already on his feet. When he reached the nursery, the laughter stopped. Lily was staring again, directly at the corner. Her chest rose and fell quickly, as though she'd been startled. David stepped into the room. The moment he crossed the threshold, a chill swept over him, raising goosebumps on his skin. The corner felt wrong. Like the air, there was heavier, darker. Melissa appeared behind him, holding her breath. She whispered, "Do you smell that?" David nodded. The odor was faint but sharp, metallic, like rust or blood. For the next 2 days, they avoided talking about it. They told themselves stress was playing tricks. Sleep deprivation. Anxiety. But deep down, both knew something was in that room. By the third night, David tried a test. He angled the baby monitor so that the corner was always visible. He wanted to prove to himself there was nothing there. At 2:30 a.m., the static grew louder. Lily stirred, then slowly sat up. She turned her head, not toward the corner this time, but directly toward the camera. Her smile stretched unnaturally wide, and then faintly on the screen, a shadow flickered into the corner. Not a shape, not clear, but movement. David's stomach dropped. Melissa clamped a hand over her mouth. And then, through the monitor's tiny speaker, came a voice. Clear this time. A whisper. "Smile for Daddy," Melissa screamed. David grabbed the monitor and bolted for the nursery. When they burst in, Lily was lying down, fast asleep. Peaceful. But the corner was darker than ever. And on the wall, faintly scratched into the paint, was a crude shape. A childlike drawing of a smiling face. They took Lily into their bed that night. Neither of them slept. At dawn, Melissa insisted they leave. "I don't care if it's crazy. We're not staying another night," David agreed. He began packing bags, moving quickly, refusing to look toward the nursery. When Melissa went to get Lily, she stopped cold. The crib was empty. The blankets were pushed back neatly, as though no one had ever been there. Her scream tore through the apartment. David rushed in, his blood running cold. They searched everywhere. Closets, under the bed, the bathroom, the hallway. Nothing. Then they heard it. Through the baby monitor, sitting still on the nightstand, a faint giggle, their daughter's voice, coming from the corner of the nursery. They left the apartment that morning, never returning. The police searched, found nothing. No forced entry, no signs of a struggle. The case went cold. But weeks later, the landlord called David. "I think you left something," he said uneasily. "We found your monitor in the nursery." David froze. We didn't leave it." The landlord cleared his throat. "Well, it was on when we found it. Still plugged in. And it was making noise." "What kind of noise?" The landlord hesitated, laughing.